In our previous video, we noted that the left's modus operandi is to accuse you and me of doing and saying what they themselves are doing and saying. It's simple projection. But we on the right engage in projection too. We tend to assume that leftists are acting in good faith when they engage in politics. They're not, and we need to stop assuming that they are. Leftists have one goal: power. They'll do anything to obtain and then to retain power. That's their prime directive. It's their main goal. We on the right need to stop assuming the left is operating in good faith, and we need to push back at them hard now. This is Dr. Avenir. In our previous video, I explained how the left engages constantly in projection. Whenever they accuse you of doing or saying something terrible, it means that they themselves are doing or saying that very same thing of which they're accusing you. And I explained it in some depth, and I also explained how if they're calling you certain names, if they're calling you racist or Nazi or fascist, it means that they themselves are racists and Nazis and fascists. Because they engage in projection, the principle is very simple. Once you do or say something terrible, you understand how you got to the place where you got to so that you could do or say that terrible thing. And therefore, you understand that anyone else could get to that place. You draw the simple conclusion that therefore people have done as you did. They went to that terrible place where they could do or say that terrible thing. Projection, everyone talks about projection as if it's some kind of flaw or as if it's a dumb thing to do. It's not. It's based in a fairly logical conclusion that you got to where you are through a sequence of events and a sequence of actions that got you there, that made complete sense as you took each step, as you crossed over each line, as you passed each milestone on the way to getting to a place where you could do or say something terrible. That's what projection is. Projection is not indicating that you are engaging in some kind of irrational thought process. Not at all. You're engaging in a thought process that makes perfect sense because you're simply saying, I got to this place. I'm no one extraordinary. Anyone else can get to this place. Therefore, others have arrived at this place, and others are doing and saying terrible things. And so you project your experience and your life path, your life trajectory on others. It's perfectly rational. It's perfectly logical. Now, I'd like to point out another perfectly logical thing. The right political wing, the conservative wing, the politically conservative wing of American politics. Well, 99.9% of the time, they're good and decent people. They have all the same conflicts, internal conflicts, moral conflicts that anyone else has, and usually they resolve those conflicts by doing the good and decent thing. And so they understand how you can get to a place where over some time, maybe you've arrived at age 45, you're a good and decent person, you've led a good life, you've had a good career, you've raised a family, the family now is, your children are younger, but maybe they're young adults, and they themselves are fairly successful. You also engage in projection, and this is very dangerous at this point. You are assuming, hey, I know how I got to a point where I'm a good and decent person. Therefore, others can get to a place just like mine where they are good and decent people. And we tend, as conservatives, to project that on everyone. That's dangerous because the left is not full of good and decent people. The left is full of people who are frequently of terrible morality, people who are greedy, envious, racist, name all the character flaws, they have them. And of course they pretend that they're the best and brightest among us, which they're not. But our problem is therefore that we think that the left is acting in good faith when they're talking about politics. They're not. They're doing whatever they can to implement their vision, whether they have to impose it on you and me or whether they can gain it legitimately at the ballot box. They rarely can gain it legitimately at the ballot box, so they lie about it constantly. But our problem on the right is when we project our good and decent values and morals on the left, who does not share those good and decent values and morals. You have to understand that. It's very, very important. They project their character flaws, which are many, on us, and we project our decency and generosity as conservative Americans on them. We're both wrong to do that. There is a meeting in the middle. We're probably not as good as we think we are. They're probably not as bad as I think they are. We're not nearly as bad as they think we are, and on and on. In other words, everything probably meets much more accurately in the middle. But the point is, when we project on the left the notion that the idea, the assumption that they're acting in good faith, that they want to get to the same place as we do, where everyone has equal opportunity, everyone can share in the American dream, no one is excluded. They don't believe that. They say they believe it, but they don't believe it. They say those things because those things sell, because they are good and decent things. Those things sell, but that's not where they want to go. Once they get in power, they show it every time. They exclude people. They marginalize people. They absolutely discriminate racially against people. It's astonishing how as soon as leftists achieve power, they do the exact opposite of what they say they were going to do. Our projection of the notion that people are basically decent onto the left is very deeply erroneous. It's as erroneous as the left's projection on us that we're evil, racist, etc. Both projections are wrong. Both make perfect sense, both are perfectly logical, and both are completely wrong, and we have to understand that as conservatives. I hope I've given you some food for thought, because you have to understand projection works both ways, and in this case, it can be very destructive, because we as conservatives need to push back at the left. We need to stop pretending that they're operating in good faith, and we need to push back, and push back hard against the left. But we'll never do that as long as we're operating under the assumption that they're operating in good faith and that we're all trying to get to the same place. We're not. We're not all trying to get to the same place. We conservatives are trying to get to the right place where people have equality of opportunity, where people treat each other equally on an individual basis, not as a member of a group, where you size up a man in terms of his character, not the color of his skin. That's where we conservatives are trying to get to. Leftists are trying to get to a place where they get power. That's it. That's all they're trying to do. That's their prime directive. That's numero uno. That's their prime goal. So, again, I hope I've given you food for thought. And if so, please support this channel. You know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. Recommend this to other people. Send links to the channel to other people. You'll always get reliably solid, hardcore, conservative, intelligent, rational principles here. And so we appreciate your support. We very much do. Thank you so much.